I had a good friend contact me recently and he wanted me to take a look at his generator and his lawnmower. Now he says his lawnmower does run because he uses it once a month between visits from his lawn person. So luckily it's not a starting issue I have to fix, but the issue I'm having is quite different from what I normally do. Now I have to admit it, but I've never had to fix a mower in this way before, and that means one of these two mowers is not going to be useful anymore. What's up everyone, and thank you for stopping by. Today's project is this Craftsman lawnmower with the Briggs flathead engine, and the problem is that it needs a new rear door because the original one finally broke, but these parts aren't readily made anymore, so when you do find one, they're quite expensive. That means we're going to need to borrow one from a different mower, and that's the other mower you see next to it. Now, I'm going to try and repair this mower, however, it may not be the exact repair you need to make to yours. We'll explore other options later in the video. Now, we're only going to mention what these other options could be. We don't have enough time to look into them, but if you need more information on these options, you're welcome to ask as many questions as you need to. I hate to say it, but it's quite difficult to tell which mower is the donor because, well, both of them are in really rough shape. The brake cable is broken on my friend's mower, which I'll address later on, and the donor doesn't even have a brake handle. On top of that, someone cut the self-propelled cable, and I can't even explain why they would even do that, but we're not here to save this mower because, as you can see, it's also missing a few parts. I don't know what's covering the airbox, but I think they put it there to keep grass from being pulled into the engine. I had to wait over 6 months to find this parts mower, and I intend on stripping it down to the mowing deck for all its parts. Now, the owner said this thing starts and runs, but I can't imagine just how loud it is without a muffler. As you can see, the bolts are broken in the head, so I might have to break out the welder to get them out. As you can see, my friend's mower even came with an electric start option, but like most people, they don't care if it works or not, so we won't be focusing on it in this episode. I also noticed that the spark plug wire was off the plug, so I'm curious to know why. Then I remembered that the brake cable was broken, so more than likely the on-off switch was bypassed to get the mower to run, so to stop the engine, he was pulling the spark plug wire. Now, this is not an ideal situation, but they really weren't worried about this fact. Now, this would also be a rather shocking experience, but they showed zero interest in fixing it, so I cannot force them into a repair that they don't want. The first thing I need to do is get the donor mower's rear door off of it. Now, I need to be very careful releasing the tension on the spring that keeps the door closed. I really don't have a good way of doing this, and my biggest concern is, of course, to make sure the spring doesn't fly loose and hit my finger. Now, the right side was pretty easy to do, but on the left side, there's a catch for the bag that's in my way, so it was a bit more difficult on this side. Once the springs have been disconnected, I thought I would just pry the ends of the door out of these metal studs, but since this door is not new, the plastic might be brittle and could break just like the other one. So instead, I'm going to opt to remove the studs from the outside because they just screw into the metal. The issue is that they're rusted into place, which means I have to use some lubricant to make it a little bit easier. On the initial turn, I thought I rounded the Allen, but it just broke loose. After removing one of the studs, I should be able to take out the door without removing the other stud. Now, after a bit of careful struggling, it finally came loose from the other side, and I was able to get it off the donor mower. I'm now back on my friend's mower, and to install the used door, I'm going to use the same process, but for ease of filming, I'm going to remove the right side stud instead of the left one. Since I already know how to do this process, the installation was pretty easy. Next, I'll slide the door from left to right onto the left side stud, and don't forget the springs as well. Once the door is in position, we simply need to replace the right side stud. I'm not worried about this coming loose, so I won't be putting any thread locker on it. This was actually a large Torx bolt, but I couldn't remember where I put my Torx socket, so I had to resort to an Allen wrench. Now, I forgot to mention this, but I did loosen the left side stud for extra clearance. Since I'd had a tough time getting it off the donor mower, I figured if I had loosened the other stud on the donor, it would have been a lot easier to remove, and it turns out I was correct. The door seems to be opening just fine, and that means we just need to set the spring ends against their tabs, and that should tension them to keep the door closed. Unfortunately, the left side spring was in the wrong orientation, so I've got to turn it the right way so that the bent end latches on the plastic door and then worry about getting the longer end against the tab. For this one, I'm not going to use my pliers and use my finger instead, but be very careful doing it this way. Once the springs have been tensioned, you can see that the door now closes and opens the way it's supposed to. The only advice I have for my friend was to not use his bag because the door will more than likely break again due to its age. Now, before I test this engine, I'm going to check the oil level and its condition. After wiping it clean and then reinserting it back into the engine, it looks as though the oil level is right at the low mark. Now, this looks bad, but it's still safe to start the engine. I know I'm going to get some comments about how I should have added more oil to it, but I don't see a problem being at the low mark. After removing the air filter cover, we can see the air filter. Now, it is dirty, but it doesn't look like it's ever had oil or gasoline on it. So what I'm going to do is tap it on a solid object to get rid of the dirt and debris that's in it, and we should be good for another season. I'll leave it up to them if they want to put a new air filter in it. The last thing I want to address is the broken brake cable. Like I said earlier, I don't have any plans on replacing it, and that's because they're not the type of person who cares to have it fixed. They've been stopping the mower by removing the spark plug for a very long time, and they're happy to continue doing it that way. So what I'm going to do is add a piece of string to it to make it easier to stop. I know some people are going to disagree with me on this one, and I completely understand. I'm just going to add a few ounces of gasoline to the tank and try not to make a huge mess while I'm at it because I just need to perform a test start. I'm not going to mow my yard with it. Now, this engine has an automatic choke, so all we need to do is pull the rope to start it. Now, the rope is really tough to pull like the engine brake is on. That means their switch bypass has undone itself, which apparently is a zip tie. I'm going to replace it with some wire, which should work for a lot longer. Like I said, if this was my mower, I would replace the cable, but they're more concerned with the rear door than a working brake handle. I can already hear someone from OSHA typing in the comments already. So it seems to start and run just fine like they said it would, and the best part is, despite the way the mower looks, the engine sounds fantastic for its age, and since the rear door has been replaced, they don't have to always use the bag when mowing now. I'm not ready to give this mower back to my friend just yet because there's one more thing I need to do, which is to drain the fuel tank. Now, the reason I'm draining the tank is because they're not going to use this mower anytime soon, especially with the way the housing market is right now. That means they won't have a lawn to mow for quite some time. In the meantime, this mower will be put into storage mode. Now, my preferred way to store a mower for an extended period of time is to have absolutely no fuel in the tank, lines, and especially in the carb. That means after we get done draining the tank, we still have to start the engine and let it use all the fuel that might be in the bowl. I'm even going to tilt the mower on its side a little bit to help get all the fuel out of the tank. Once I think I've gotten most of it out of the tank, I'll replace the line, the clamp, and then start the engine again. Once the mower is stopped, I want to try and start it again, and I would only pull the rope a few times just to make sure it's used up all the fuel inside the carb. Another option when it comes to a broken rear door would be to block this area off permanently with a plate. However, you would never be able to bag your grass again, but we'd also not have to worry about getting hit with grass clippings while you mow either. So my question is, would you consider replacing the rear door the way I did, or would you buy a new door instead? Personally, if this was my mower, I would block off the opening because I like to mulch my grass clippings. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate your time here. Please feel free to ask me any questions about this project or about your own projects, and I hope to see you in the next video.